Many organizations developed several functional forecasts for the same products during the same time period, such as financial forecasts, manufacturing forecasts, marketing forecasts, and distribution forecasts. Now, if they're not on the same boat, they don't match, then this just adds more complexity to the supply chain. So one of the things that we've done to alleviate the problems of all these different forecasts is to agree on one forecast, which we call a sales and operating forecast or sales and operating plan. So the first thing we do is we run a sales forecast. This is the forecast we're going to use to push throughout our supply chain. Then we're going to take that forecast and say, can we produce to meet that forecast? And then we're going to ask ourselves, can we get enough raw material to meet the production to support the sales forecast? And if we can agree that we can do it, then we go ahead and run that and we start producing and buying to meet that sales forecast. If we don't, we adjust our sales forecast and our production forecast. The last step is having the executive sign off on it, saying go forth, and that gives people the right to buy materials and so forth. Okay, so here we're laying out the steps kind of graphically so you can see what's going on. We have things coming in from the end of the month. One of the main things we're going to look at coming back from the previous month is back orders, any sales that we weren't able to meet. That has to go into our forecast. So we might have a typical forecast saying that we're going to sell 200 units this month, but how many back orders did we have? So we add those back orders into that sales forecast. And then once we have that forecast, we push that into the demand phase. So we're looking at whatever we're going to sell this month. Say it's 250 units now. And we look at what finished goods we might have left over. Say that's 25. And we might want to have 5 left on the shelf. So 25 minus 5 is 20. 20 minus 250, that means that we need to produce 230 units this month in order to meet our sales forecast. We go to our manufacturing group, can we make 230 units this month? And they look at the risks associated with that. Their capacity can be machines, can be people, can be space. So they'll massage the number and go back to sales and say they can or cannot. And if they can't, they'll readjust the sales forecast because that's the basis for all of our all of our planning. So once we have that worked out and we say, okay, we have the capacity to make this 230 units, and that means that we need this much raw material. Then we go to our supply side or our purchasing department and say, look, this is what we need to make. This is the raw material we have on hand. This is how much we have to buy in order to fulfill our manufacturing plan. They look at their suppliers, their lead times, they make arrangements, they make the purchase orders, or they talk to the suppliers to make sure that because they can't make the purchase orders yet because they haven't got the executive sign off. But given their lead times and their knowledge of their suppliers and their opportunities, then they come back and say, this is the risks we have to manufacturing the 230 or supporting the manufacturing of the 230. Then the fourth step is they all get together and they look at the risks. They see if they're the risks that can be mitigated and are they things that they've worked around in the past. Is it 90% chance that we can make this sales and manufacturing plan? If so, then we go ahead and take it to the executives and say, this is our plan. These are the risks. These are how we're going to mitigate the risks. We think we can make this plan work, and it will give us 98% customer fulfillment. And that's your S&OP. Now what's funny is in the chapter, it's only 2 pages on S&OP, but this can be a major portion of your life. From manufacturing, purchasing, and marketing, working together, coordinating, collaborating, trying to get the sales out to a given number. And we're also working with finance because finance is going to be reporting projected sales for the next month, for the next 3 months. So the S&OP is how we collaborate within our own company. That's our internal collaboration to make sure that we can meet what we believe will be customer demand. Make sure that our manufacturing is on board, make sure our purchasing department's on board. Everyone, even our logistics group, our physical distributions on board so we know that we have the bandwidth to meet whatever customer demand we expect to have. When we talk about collaboration, we use a lot of technology to help us. In fact, one of the things that I've done is help companies take one single program and push it through the whole company so that once we have the sales forecast, we can push it directly through manufacturing and purchasing, and before we give it the green light, it can tell us automatically what kind of risks we might see, what kind of bandwidth problems we might have throughout the organization. That's something we can do internally. Now, as we go further and say, well, we understand our supply chain is not just our company. Our supply chain is our suppliers, and sometimes it's people that we outsource some of our manufacturing to, perhaps our partners in China, perhaps our partners in Mexico. How do we collaborate our S&OP with them, and how do we include them in this planning process? We have to use a lot of our internet technology, we have to use a lot of IT, we have to have a lot of interfaces to make sure that our systems are talking to their systems and that we're very clear on what our expectations are. Okay, remember how I was saying, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, each department would have their own forecast and how that would have conflicts and we wouldn't have efficiencies or might not be as effective in meeting customer demand. Now we're looking at that same problem. Well, what did we do to address that problem? We created the S&OP. Now we're saying, hey, wait, we have all these retailers and we have these distribution channels, and they all have their own forecasts versus the manufacturers, right? So what do? Well, we try to extend the S&OP throughout the supply chain, and that's what this CPRF model is. This is an attempt to have everyone that is giving a customer some product all the way out to the retailer. We all agree on one forecast for that, and we all execute towards that forecast. Of course, this becomes very complicated. Like I said before on the other slide, we need a lot of help from our IT department to make sure that the information that we're sharing is accurate and relevant, up to date, that type of thing. So you don't need to memorize this slide. There's a lot in this slide, but you need to understand what CPRF is trying to do, how we're trying to expand the S&OP model to the whole supply chain. We're trying to capture everyone in the supply chain that's creating and supplying some part or some material to our customer.